This and every episode of the Brülosophy podcast is brought to you by the American Homebrewers Association, a member-driven organization that wants to help you save money on beer and brewing supplies. In addition to providing brewing resources and hosting one-of-a-kind events, the AHA offers money-saving discounts at nearly 2,000 beery destinations around the country through their Member Deals program. Join the AHA at homebrewersassociation.org and make your beer money go further. Hey everybody, you're listening to the Brülosophy podcast. I'm your host, Marshall Schott, and in this episode, which happens to be our 30th, we've got some very special stuff planned. We've been focusing quite a bit on yeast lately, which makes sense. It's a pretty important part of this whole brewing thing, turning the wort that we produce into the beer that we end up enjoying. As every brewer is very well aware, there are a bunch of different yeasts out there, various Saccharomyces and Brettanomyces strains, as well as other microbes such as Lactobacillus that brewers use to produce unique and tasty beer. Joining me on the show today is a relatively new yeast company with an ethos that's a bit different than other yeast labs. Self-described as an open-source yeast and wild bugs project whose goal is to create the world's most diverse library of microbes for the creation of fermented foods and beverages, Bootleg Biology is the go-to source for many mixed fermentation fanatics, including dudes like American Sour Beers author Michael Tonsmeyer, who collaborated with Bootleg about a year ago to release the mad fermentationist Saison blend, which quickly gained a very positive reputation in the brewing world. Well, I've been chatting with the folks from Bootleg Biology myself for a little while about doing our own little collaboration, something we think represents Brülosophy well and that we're excited to announce to you all. They're going to be joining me in a minute to discuss a series of experiments that we've done with a new product that you're able to get your hands on right now. Speaking of Michael Tonsmeyer, he recently hung out via Facebook Live with patrons of Brülosophy, those who pledge only $3 per month to support what it is we're doing. It worked out so much better than even I expected. He answered questions on the spot about any IPA hop schedules and water chemistry, sour beer brewing, and all the progress of opening up his own brewery, Sapwood Cellars. Probably one of the more interesting and educational hours of 2018 for me so far. Our next livecast session is going to be on March 24th for those who made their pledges prior to March 1st, with very special guest John Palmer, who recently released the 4th edition of How to Brew. He's also the author of Water, a Comprehensive Guide for Brewers, and of course, Brewing Classic Styles with Jamil Zainasheff. If you weren't able to get in early enough and want to get in on the action, head over to patreon.com/Brülosophy and make a pledge at the $3 level or higher today. Our guest for next month is one of the most decorated homebrewers whose palate's arguably among the top in the world, BJCP Grandmaster Judge Gordon Strong. We're making sure to record these sessions, so if you missed any of the ones that happened before you become a patron, you're going to have the opportunity to go back and watch them once you become a patron. And of course, this is only one of the many rewards that we do offer. Patrons pledging at other levels receive private Brülosophy recipes, unique discounts to Yakima Valley hops, and the opportunity to join us in a monthly video chat, as well as some other stuff. So go check it out for yourself, patreon.com/Brülosophy, to see what you can get for helping us out. Again, that's patreon.com/Brülosophy. To view all the other ways you can help us to continue bringing you this content, head over to brülosophy.com/support, where you'll find links that you can bookmark and use whenever you shop online. It's really easy. You won't notice any difference in your shopping experience, and we get a little kickback that helps us out a ton. Finally, if you could take a second to rate this show and leave a review wherever it is that you listen to podcasts, we'd really appreciate it. The feedback is super helpful. And don't forget to subscribe as well. That way you can get a notification whenever we drop a new episode. Never miss a beat. We got a little bit of feedback here. Reddit user JM Jonkman, I think that's how you say that, asked if there's any chance we could put the Brülosophy podcast on Spotify. I wasn't even aware that this was an option, to be honest with you, but I did look into it. And unlike other podcast platforms, Spotify requires this weird application and review process. I guess they're really picky about the content that they host. But for those of you who would prefer Spotify, just so you know, I did submit an application. I've yet to hear back. It's been about a week. But when I do, I'll be sure to let you guys know. Stand by. Another general issue that's been coming up quite a bit lately has to do with finding the Brülosophy podcast in common places like Apple Podcasts and Google Play, using certain keywords like homebrewing, brewing, and the like. I did some digging and discovered that this is a very common issue for podcasters out there. It doesn't really have a great solution, so I'm not really sure how to deal with it. And I guess if you're listening to the show now, you found us, so it's not a huge deal. But if you subscribe, you're going to get a notification when we release new episodes anyways. But I will continue to look into how to fix that so that people can find us easier in those places. All right, final piece of feedback. I got an email from an Indianapolis, Indiana homebrewer named Kyle McKinnon, and he says, "Thank you. I tend to be skeptical of new products, but figured I'd pick up a pack of Imperial Yeast L13 Global Lager Yeast for a Pilsner I was making due to all the praise you guys have been giving it. I pitched an active 2-liter starter into 50-degree Fahrenheit wort, which I believe is 10 degrees Celsius, at 9 p.m. And had a Kreuzen by 6 a.m. the next morning. 1052 OG to 1012 FG in 6 days without ramping the temperature. Wow. This beer has been lagering for a week, and I can already tell it's the best Pilsner I've made. Consider me a fan." I got this email about 2 weeks ago, so I'm sure that keg's probably half gone at this point. But Kyle, that's rad, man. Good to hear that others are experiencing the same performance from Imperial Yeast that we do. We're so stoked to have them as a sponsor of the show. Rapid starts, great attenuation, and quick fermentations are no surprise considering each pack of Imperial Yeast contains 200 billion cells of the purest yeast out there. Imperial offers a number of ale and lager strains as well as some less conventional stuff. You can go check out everything they have to offer at imperialyeast.com. I literally just pitched a starter of their flagship yeast into a barley wine that I'm making. So we'll see how that turns out. Alrighty, with HomebrewCon being in Portland this year, a city where Brülosophy has no contributors, the most feasible way for us to get beer to our booth is to have others brew it for us. A pretty daunting task considering we're going to be serving these beers to thousands of attendees. And on top of that, they're all going to have some sort of experimental element to them. Well, I'm really excited to have finally solidified a group of decorated local Oregonian homebrewers to help us out with this. Jake Freshour, Jeremy Jalabert, and Alex Brem will be brewing up experiment beers as well as some stuff for the Hop Chronicles and our Short and Shoddy project, all of which we're going to be collecting data on at our HomebrewCon booth. On top of that, we got a ton of other killer stuff planned with our friends from Yakima Valley Hops, Mecca Great Estate Malt, and Imperial Yeast. In fact, I just learned that Imperial Yeast will be hosting a pre-conference event that they're calling Insane in the Yeast Strain. It sounds like it's going to be pretty rad. The event's going to be hosted at Imperial Bottle Shop, which apparently has no relation to Imperial Yeast, on the evening of June 27th from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. They're going to be serving a series of 12 beers, all made from the same base wort, but inoculated with different Imperial Yeast strains. I love stuff like this. Everybody's Brewing from White Salmon, Washington is going to be making the beers, and attendees are going to be given the option to choose from preset flights of 4 different beers. So basically the same beer fermented with different yeasts. The cool part is that this is a non-ticket event. So if you're around Portland early, you can just show up, around 6 p.m. or anytime between 6 and 9, drink some beer, chat with the folks from Imperial Yeast, and Everybody's Brewing. The Brülosophy crew is going to be there too, hanging out, so you can come bump into us as well. Registration for HomebrewCon opens March 6th, which is probably today for many of you, so go secure your tickets now. If you're not already an AHA member, which you have to be to go to HomebrewCon, you can sign up at homebrewersassociation.org or help us out by going to brülosophy.com/AHA. Okay, so one of the dudes brewing for us for HomebrewCon is Jeremy Jalabert. He reached out to me a while ago to ask about sending me some beer to be reviewed on the show. His name sounded familiar when he reached out to me. This was, 2-3 months ago. So I Googled it like the creeper that I am and discovered that Jeremy is the 2017 Oregon State Homebrewer of the Year Grand Champion, which basically means he's one of the best homebrewers in all of Oregon State. Damn. He sent me a couple bottles of an American Pale Ale he made, one of which I shared with my friends.
1 minute beer review with Jersey and Tim.
I can smell it's an IPA.
You smelt it? Oh, you're saying it's an IPA?
Yes.
Definitely an IPA.
Definitely. It's good though. Smooth.
You don't like IPA.
I don't.
Yeah.
Here comes the juniper.
Back to juniper. Soap and juniper. No, it's a good IPA.
Yeah.
We're getting a little confident. What if it's not an IPA? We're going to be made to look like fools.
It's not hard.
We are learned men.
Well, you are.
We're not saying much. We're just drinking
Yeah.
it. That should
It's
cue
not
you
bad
in.
for me to like it.
I'd put it on tap at my house.
Yeah, I would too.
And you'd like it.
For my guests.
And you wouldn't even have to act like you liked it. That's good. Crisp and clean. There's not a lot of after effects.
Yeah, it's not lingering on.
It's just an IPA and it tastes good, and I don't have to deal with a bunch of bullshit afterwards. I hate dealing with bullshit
see?
afterwards.
I'm rubbing off on you now.
Exactly. I just want that clean, crisp taste, and then I want to, yeah, it's good.
Good job, whoever. whoever.
Good. You made a good beer, whoever. Good enough for lay people like us. I mean, we're of course not professionals.
Speak for yourself.
The regular Joes like your beer. Let's review that one again. I'd drink another glass of that one. That's delish.
Yeah, it's not bad.
Wait. Is it an IPA or we were made to look like fools?
You're close. It's actually an American pale ale.
Oh, shit.
damn it.
But it's a pale ale. Maybe not Indian, but it's a pale ale.
Listen, I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a sense of pride with Jersey and Tim after this review. American Pale Ale is one of those styles I feel doesn't get the love that it deserves in this world of like hyper hopped IPA. And Jeremy's did the style justice. I'm telling you, solid hop character with a delicious malt backbone, clean, fermentation profile, everything I expect from a well-made pale ale. While it was different than one of my favorite commercial examples, which is Firestone Walker's Pale 31, which is sadly going the way of the dodo. Jeremy's beer definitely left me with a similar feeling of satisfaction. Great job, Jeremy. Thank you for sending those to me. And thank you for brewing your delicious beers for us for HomebrewCon. If you want your beer or some other fermented beverage reviewed by Jersey and Tim on the show, you can email me, Marshall@Brülosophy.com, and we'll get you all set up. It's as fun as it is unpredictable. All right, we're going to head to a very quick break. Bootleg Biology is going to be joining me when we come back to talk about some interesting experiment data that we've secretly been collecting on a rad new product that's available for you to use right now. After a long brew day, the last thing I want to do is waste time chilling work, which is why I use cleverly designed immersion chillers from Jaded Brewing. After some bad experiences with counterflow and plate chillers, I began the search for a more efficient chilling solution and discovered Jaded. That was nearly 4 years ago, and to this day, I continue to rely on the King Cobra and the Hydra to chill my wort in record time without the setup or cleaning hassle of other chillers. If you're looking for a way to optimize your brew day, I can't recommend Jaded chillers enough. Go see what they have to offer at jadedbrewing.com and let them know Brülosophy sent you.
Compact and simple to use with a small footprint for brewing indoors, the Grainfather makes it easy for you to brew professional quality beers at home. The Grainfather is an all-in-one brewing system that lets you brew all grain beer in a single compact stainless steel unit. It uses an electric heating element and pump to maintain a constant temperature and to circulate the wort during the mashing and cooling stages. It also comes with a counterflow chiller to reduce chilling times and produce high quality wort. And now, with the addition of their conical fermenter, the Grainfather takes things one step further by offering homebrewers state-of-the-art temperature-controlled fermentation just like commercial breweries use. And with the Grainfather Recipe Creator and Connect app, you can easily design a recipe, sync your brewing system with your phone, and then just sit back and relax as the app takes over and assures that you maintain your scheduled mash temps and boil schedule. Head to Grainfather.com to purchase your all-in-one brewing system today and to sign up for their free recipe creator tool. Once more, head on over to Grainfather.com, that's Grainfather.com, and get started today.
When dumping wort-soaked grain and leftover low-gravity wort while cleaning up after a brew day, do you ever wonder what your true efficiency would be if that wort made its way to the kettle instead? Using the brew bag, a fabric filter for all mash tuns and brewing methods, allows you to capture every last drop of wort. Not only does this increase kettle efficiency, it lowers your grain bill, which saves you money. Throwing wort in the trash is like dumping a 12-pack down the drain and just doesn't make sense. Use the brew bag and leave no wort behind. I've been using these filters for a long time and recommend them to everyone. I never have to worry about a stuck sparge and cleanup is fast and easy. Go grab yourself a brew bag fabric filter at brewinabag.com and be sure to use code TBP17 at checkout to get a discount on your order. Driven by a passion for interestingly delicious beers fermented with locally sourced yeast and bugs, Bootleg Biology is paving a new path for brewers who are interested in more than just the typically available microbes. Joining me today is Chief Yeast Wrangler Jeff Mello, Yeast Whisperer Isaac Bannon, and Sam Winnica, the bioprospector. Thanks for coming on the show, guys. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Bootleg Biology?
Well, Bootleg Biology kind of started in the basement, or I guess the kitchen, the bathroom, kind of every room in my house.
That sounds really like a good place to pick up some bugs.
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot to say, I'm Jeff Mello, Chief Yeast Wrangler. So it was really kind of just a side project of a home brewer. I had recently quit my job. I had a lot of free time. And I actually had read an article in BYO that Mike Tunsmeyer had written about making ambient yeast spontaneous jars, kind of a little starter to make lambic beers. And so I thought that would be a fun thing to do in my backyard. Had some interesting results, which were kind of gross looking, but they kind of had promise to them. They smelled really good, like honey and that kind of thing. So I felt like there was something more I could get out of it. And so I went to the University of Google and self-taught how to make agar plates and isolate yeast. And then from that came our first local yeast project, Culture Arlingtonesis. And then it was just kind of a snowball from there. It was, well, let's make a website to teach other people how to do this kind of thing. Because if I could do it, and I'm not a trained scientist, other people could do it.
Right.
And then beyond that, it was like, well, let's just start a yeast company. I have no idea what I'm doing, but let's just go for it. And then fast forward a couple of years, we're now in Nashville, Tennessee, and we're growing from there.
It's an amazing story. There's something about the fact that you have no formal, and I put formal in air quotes because I feel like with the University of YouTube, as it is these days, and Google, formal training is kind of, well, I'm not going to get into that controversial topic right now, but it's awesome that what you've created, I tried my hand at harvesting wild yeast a couple of times. I thought I was actually inspired by you guys. You guys, what was it, about 2013 when you kind of made this thing official? Was that?
Yeah. So we kind of started in 2013, and then 2014, NHC, or I guess, now it's HomebrewCon. We came out with the backyard yeast wrangling toolkit. And that really was kind of like the very beginnings of us kind of spreading the word about local yeast.
Yeah. Yeah. So cool. Well, I had heard about what you guys were up to and thought, I'm going to try my hand at this whole like yeast wrangling wild thing. And so in the middle of a 105-degree Fresno summer, I just stuck it was like a dirty pitcher that I had of leftover wort, and I just kind of put it under a bush in my front yard. Needless to say, that beer didn't turn out very well. But I got something out of it at the very least. And no, not very good. So what you guys are doing is rad. Well, who else is with you, Jeff?
So I'm Isaac Brannon. I've been with Bootleg almost since the beginning, since Jeff moved out of the basement into an actual physical location. I started homebrewing in college, and that kind of inspired me to pursue a degree in microbiology. After graduating, I was kind of just stoked to find a job where I could put all that I learned to use in an actual beer job. So that's why I'm here.
So you're the formally trained part of Bootleg Biology then?
Yeah, I'm the one stamped scientist.
Yeah, Isaac's a very big reason for our success because, I had a lot of, I'd say, fun ideas, but Isaac helped kind of formalize those and codify them into, using scientific principles in ways that helped us kind of grow and better understand, yeast and wild yeast. Right.
That's awesome. And Sam, Mr. Bioprospector, I think I can put together what it is you're up to, but why don't you tell us about yourself, man?
Right. I like to spend as much time as I can looking for new strains for us to isolate here. I think I could also add sterilizer in chief to that category. I do a lot of wort sterilization and things that we just sort of need done on a continual basis around here.
Right.
But I came on in the fall, and I like to say I'm a recovering journalist or recovering flack. Also not a scientific background, but been homebrewing for about a decade, and really learning a lot through this whole thing.
That's awesome. So I think we first, Jeff and I at least, first met in, was it San Diego or Baltimore?
Baltimore. I think Baltimore.
Yeah, I think so. You had your cute little kid there and your wife with you. And I remember it was the Milk the Funk meetup, and we kind of started talking about some cool ideas and whatnot. And then again, last year in Minneapolis, I one of my favorite memories was the big dinner we had at Brits, that English pub. And I think Isaac was there with you then.
Yep.
Bangers and mash.
Bangers and mash, baby. All day long. But we had this idea. You guys had released the Mad Fermentation as seasonal Saison blend, right?
Yep.
And we had the idea to maybe do something together as well like that, and started talking about it. And then kind of after going back and forth a little bit, we decided to come up with what we thought fit the Brülosophy ethos relatively well, which was, let's aim for a yeast that is really versatile, meaning that it can ferment all different types of beer and still produce a quality product. I'm going to let you guys talk a little bit about what you ended up doing and how we ended up getting yeast in our hands to mess around with.
Well, can't give away too many secrets, right?
No secrets, yeah. This could be a really boring show.
Well, I think the main thing for us is, we're home brewers first and foremost. We work with a lot of professional breweries. We do commercial sized pitches, but we're home brewers first, and we like talking to home brewers and understanding, what is driving their brewing. I mean, I think home brewers are on the forefront of the most exciting brewing trends in the world right now. So if we can add to that knowledge or give them more tools, or help us to learn more about yeast, that's kind of what we're all about. So I think when we have those conversations, about a Brülosophy culture, we were kind of inspired to think about, what could be the most unique way that we could add to the brewing world, something yeast focused, but also is kind of, helpful for all brewers. We're definitely known for coming up with wild yeast cultures and bacterias and things for barrel age and whatever. But what can we do to, help push the brewing world in a direction that makes brewing easier, more flavorful? The things that you guys focus on a lot, I think it just really inspires us to come up with unique cultures. And so anytime we come up with a new culture, it's something that we want to have completely different from what anyone else has ever done. We don't want to just kind of copy paste another yeast labs culture. We want to have something that's going to hopefully change the brewing world, as audacious as that is. So.
but it makes sense. And we talked about this during this development process that, Bootleg is obviously known for kind of the wild, funky, sour stuff. And if ever there were a vanilla, crew of brewers out there, Brülosophy is it. We understand, and that's not to say that we don't enjoy the wilder side of brewing. We absolutely do. Malcolm was just down and got to tour your guys' facility. It sounds like, we all brew sour beer. We all do that, but it just for the purposes of what it is that we're experimenting with. We felt that going with a cleaner strain, which. I don't know how unique that is for you guys. Do you have many non-Brett, bacterial strains out there?
Yeah, I mean, officially at least not many. We have Saison Parfait, which is our Saison culture, and it's all brewers' yeast cultures. We have our Chardonnay and Arlingtonensis, which are our local yeast project cultures, and those are actually, they were sourced from the wild, but they are pure yeast cultures. So Arlingtonensis is actually a wild caught lager culture. And Chardonnay is a variant of a Cerevisiae culture. So it's essentially an ale strain. And those, when they're pitched as pure cultures, make clean beers. Mm-hmm. So we found it in the wild, but we're making really nice, tasty, clean beers with those. And I think something like Arlingtonensis, people don't think as much about with us because it is a lager culture and is a clean tasting yeast strain, but it makes really, really good beers. And that perception of only doing wild, that's not just us in our own home brewing. We're really obsessed with lagers. We love clean ale strains. I love cask ale. It's one of the most purest expressions of a well-made beers I can think of. Keller beers, those kind of things. Things that are even yeast derived or yeast forward in ways that we don't really think about. That's the stuff that we love. And so having this culture be unique in some way or add some unique value, even for, your brewer who's not doing a bunch of funky yeast stuff, is something that's super exciting to us.
Super exciting to us as well. I mean, we are all huge lager fans, lager beer fans, but we also like other styles as well. Now our aim in our discussions and our primary goal here was to create some sort of a yeast blend of some sort that would allow us to make these various types of relatively clean style beers that are more malt and hop focused, using a single strain, a single yeast. And so we set something. Now I'm going to release a little bit of a secret. This isn't going to kill it, but I told all of my guys, this is the fun part of this experiment. When we started talking about testing this out, I mentioned to the Brülosophy crew that we were going to all be receiving potentially different yeast strains that we were going to put to the test so that we could determine after the fact which one we wanted to go with. So this is the first time I'm saying this. This is probably how they're going to learn that we didn't do that, but we all did receive the same exact yeast blend, right? And it was hilarious to me the entire time we were, everybody brewed these beers around the same time, and we're doing our own comparisons. We're going to get into the data that we collected on that in a bit, but everyone was trying to predict what yeast it might be like, and it's maybe for this, and go figure. Basically everybody's guess as to what strain it was what tended to match with whatever beer it was that they made. Yeah. Which is great. I mean, to me, that was like the first piece of data that we got that maybe this thing is doing exactly what we wanted to do. So, we ended up taking this yeast blend and fermenting, 6 different beer styles with it. Each of us fermented a beer on our own, and then we went out and collected a trove of data on this, mostly evaluative in nature, and I think we'll just jump right into talking about that now. The first person we're going to talk about is Brian Hall, who lives up in Anchorage, Alaska. He brewed a New England style IPA. Before we get into this data, I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about the fact that New England IPA is, I think what we've come to, at least in this day and age, is that New England IPA kind of deserves a very characterful English yeast strain. I think that one of the more common ones is like Imperial's Juice, or Y Yeast has their, 13 something.
Yeah,
that's right. And so we were super curious about how this blend was going to kind of convey itself in a New England style IPA. He ended up brewing a beer that was about 74% pale malt and 26% flake dough. It's pretty typical. 1055 OG down to 1008 FG, so 6.2% ABV.
I mean, that's impressive. I mean, we've actually been experimenting with some strains specifically just for hazy IPAs, and we've done a lot of side-by-sides, and we actually did a side-by-side with some hazy IPAs and the Brülosophy Blend and some other well-known cultures. And it's unique just, even if overall the fermentation profile is fairly similar, just those subtle differences in the flavor and aroma really can be enough to really sell a certain hop character or the flavor profile. So to me, this is really interesting.
Yeah, likewise. I was kind of wondering, we've been on this, plight to figure out where in the world all the haze in these hazy IPAs is coming from. So I was super curious to see how a yeast that we don't really know if it has English origin or not, right? I mean, we're not discussing the origin of this thing, right. But how it would come through in this classically hazy type of beer. So what we did, and we used the same survey for everybody for all of these different beers. So it's going to get kind of redundant, but all of the data is a little bit different. The first question we asked on the survey is, how hoppy is the beer? Now, I want to get it out there that we did tell survey takers what the style of beer was. We wanted to have them kind of grounded in a specific style so that when they were evaluating, they were evaluating it relative to a particular style. And so we asked people how hoppy the beer was. And let's see here. On a 0 to 5 scale, where 0 meant not at all and 5 meant extremely, we had 9 people say that it was rank it a 2, and then 9 people rank it a 3, and then 7 people rank it a 4, with nobody ever marks extremely on anything. But so I would contend that it was a pretty hoppy beer for the majority of people, with 9 people saying it was maybe moderately hoppy. In terms of the character that these tasters got from that beer, 10 people marked that the strongest hop character was fruity, so citrus, tropical fruit, stone fruit, stuff like that. The second biggest was pine and resinous, which was 6 people. Then we had some floral, and then everything else just kind of spread out from there, from earthy to, it looks like melon and dank and catty. But the majority of them got what I think Brian was intending to get out of this juicy IPA, which was a fruity character. So it says that this yeast really did allow those hops to kind of shine through.
Yeah, and I think that's a question I think with a lot of yeast cultures is like, is it accentuating, what you're putting in there, or is it kind of getting out of the way? And I think that's something I want to think about as we go through all of these different test beers is, how it could be doing either of those things.
Right. In the hop descriptors question, what specific flavors or characteristics they're getting probably would depend more on the hop variety, but to know that the yeast is bolstering those flavors and not getting in the way or contributing a conflicting flavor or something like that is a good result for this.
Yeah, it's really promising. I agree. And I had the pleasure of hearing Brian's own personal impressions as he was kegging and drinking these beers. So how the next question had to do with the maltiness of the beer. And again, if we're going for a clean-ish strain, we want that malt character to at least be there, but we don't, I think a lot of people hear malty and they think caramelly and rich and all of that stuff. So we want it to be appropriate to the style that was brewed. And I think in this one, again, it came through really well. You've got 10 people giving it a 2. So it wasn't terribly malty, meaning it was a hop forward beer. Surprise, surprise. 11 people ranked it a 1. So really just not malty, very malty at all. 3 people said not at all, which is surprising. Again, that's kind of an extreme rating. And only 1 person ranked it a 4. So you've got the huge majority of people putting it as kind of minimally malty, and while people are saying that it's pretty hoppy. And in terms of those the malt character that people were picking up, you've got exactly what you'd expect. Cracker, bread crust, 18 people said that, with a couple people coming in with toasty, caramelly, and nutty.
Well, for the style, you would expect the lower malt presence sort of to be picked up. And then if it is mostly a base malt, the cracker bread crust would fit. So that's good that the strain was able to allow that to come through without, in a lower or a hoppier beer with not as much malt character, sometimes the yeast can sort of come through, I think, a little more. So again, sort of that it got out of the way and let the hops take over for the New England is a good sign.
Yeah. And something I failed to mention about the fruity kind of hop character, one of the something that I've been hearing a lot lately, at least, is that part of that fruitiness is the interplay between the esters developed by a characterful English yeast strain, as well as the hops. And I can't help but wonder to what extent the hoppiness of this New England IPA maybe was hit a little bit in people's minds who are expecting this kind of more pungent ester / hop fruit character, as opposed to just in your face fruitiness, perhaps.
It's funny. It's like the maltiness, it's just something people don't talk much about in that kind of style too, but it's got to play a part in whether it's just being a supporting player to the hops. Same thing with the yeast. They're all kind of playing together in ways that even most of us don't even fully understand. But if you were to drastically change the malt bill on that beer, it could be curious to see how much of a difference overall that makes in what people are perceiving in the maltiness. And I think as we get through some of the other styles, it'll be interesting to see how that style and how people perceive the malt character of that style really is seen as prominent or not at all.
Yeah, definitely. The next question we asked had to do with fermentation and attenuation. How dry do you perceive the beer to be? And kind of right along with what you'd expect. Most people ranked it a 4 out of 5. So this is a pretty dry beer. You had another good chunk rated a 2 out of 5. 6 people thought it was a 3 out of 5. So right kind of in that 2 to 4 range. 2 people thought it was extremely dry. Yet again, another extreme rating. Again, kind of what you'd expect from this type of beer. The yeast and you know, that's going to be driven to some degree, I think, at least conventionally thinking about it, by your mash temperature and whatnot. And you know, Brian is known for mashing pretty low, particularly for IPA. So that's not terribly surprising. In terms of the descriptors for the yeast and fermentation character, you've got 72% of participants who rated it as clean. So American ale, lager, stuff like that. Another 5 thought that there might be some esters, which, you know, I think when you've got all that fruit character from hops, it's really hard to kind of parse out the ester character from the hop character. So not saying they were wrong, but yeah.
This is actually one of the beer styles that has the largest percentage of people picking up esters, and that might be kind of coming from the hop fruit character.
Yeah. Well, and you know, perhaps the slightly higher OG, you know, mixed with other stylistic kind of unique aspects of New England IPA. Maybe there were some esters in there, but I tend to think that in a style like this, that it's more likely the hops than not. Not saying that for sure it is, but the next question we asked, and we've always got to ask this, is do you perceive any off flavors in the beer? Little side opinion of mine is that I'm guilty of this, so I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, but I feel like homebrewers kind of like tend to kind of think like, if I'm the one who picks out the off flavor, then I've obviously got the better palate, you know, and like that makes me cooler and people are going to seek my opinion about their beer. So I think there's always an element of that we have to kind of toss into this question whenever we're asking people to pick up off flavors. But it wasn't many people who thought that they detected off flavors in Brian's beer. 6 did, 19 said that they didn't. So out of the 25, it was only 24%. Of the participants, and the off flavors that people detected were kind of all over the place. 3 picked up oxidation, 2 pointed out esters, which again seems a little bit off, but that maybe they were there. And then 1 apiece chose acetaldehyde, astringent, DMS, grassy, metallic, and musty.
Well, I think, you know, with this style, I mean, to even go further to your point on, you know, trying to be the best palate there, I think this style, you know, it's gotten so much scrutiny from everyone, whether it's home brewers, craft brewers. I mean, magazines are writing articles about this style. I think people just really are thinking critically when they're drinking these beers.
Yeah.
But it also has a lot of fluidity too. You know, there aren't really great guidelines on these beers because they're still changing. You know, there's so many variants now of a New England IPA. So some of those things I think are just part of that too.
Yeah.
People are still wrapping their head around what that beer really is.
Right. I think that makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
And I think, you know, just to the style question, if there's a style that's going to have oxidation, it might probably be New England IPA.
Oh my word. Right. I mean,
so the fact that was picked up, I guess the most common off flavor that was picked up is not super surprising to me. I mean, 26 samples, 25 samples, whatever it is, you know, there's definitely a possibility some of them were handled differently, or some of them might be have come into contact with more oxygen than the others. So
right. I mean, oxidation and New England IPA is a topic that's getting a ton of attention right now, not only from us, but I think, you know, from anyone who's interested in New England IPA, it's become a real issue to focus on. So not terribly surprising. Grassy. I mean, he threw a shit ton of hops in this thing. That not terribly surprising. Again, metallic, you know, I know he listens to death metal while brewing, so maybe that has something to do with it. But the next question we asked was, how well does the beer represent the intended style? This is one of my favorite questions because it kind of forces people to say, all right, you know, if he were to serve this to me out of a can that had some popular label on it, what would I think it fit, right? And I've had some of Brian's New England IPAs before. The 52% of tasters, that's 13, said that it was a 4 out of 5 in terms of representative of style for a New England IPA. So that's a majority of people. But then interestingly, you've got, this one was all over the place. You got one person who said it wasn't even close, you know, not at all. 2 people who ranked it a 1, 5 people who ranked it a 2, another 3 people who ranked it a 3. And then you got that one, outlier who was like, this is the best New England IPA I ever had. But this was one I was expecting, like I mentioned before, with New England IPA, you expect it to be hazy. Now, we served these beers in clear glasses, and Brian did show me the Brülosophy Blend fermented beer did clear up quite a bit more and quite a bit quicker than another one that he pitched with Imperial Yeast Juice, which is a kind of a noted, New England IPA type strain. And they looked totally different, but he had his own impressions about the bootleg Brülosophy Blend one. Despite this kind of difference in haze, it doesn't surprise me that people would look at that haze and be biased to say that maybe it wasn't very representative of style.
Yeah.
Right, it's the hallmark.
Yeah, exactly.
If it's not hazy, I mean, then it's not style, right?
And then, of course, we have to ask about how much people enjoyed the beer. I'm just going to go between ranked 3 and 5. You got 20 of the people, and then another 5 people ranked it either a 1 or a 2. So large majority enjoyed the beer. Brian did enjoy the beer very much himself. So the Brülosophy Blend fermenting a New England style IPA. What say you guys?
I say do it.
Yeah, we did several runs of this when we were first putting the blend together, and had some pretty well received. We served some at our lab. When customers stop by or anything, we have some on tap, and had some well received New England IPAs with this strain. So I say go for it.
Yeah, likewise. It may not be the haziest of your New England style IPAs, but his beer did maintain a nice haze. It may not be totally opaque, but it really does end up looking like a good version of a New England IPA. So I say go for it as well. Now, I got to cut in. We have one contributor. I'm not going to say his name is Malcolm or anything, but he was his task was to brew an American style IPA. But unfortunately, because of life getting in the way, he was unable to collect the data for that beer. I'm sure we're going to get some updates on it in the future, though. You guys, if I recall, you guys brewed an American style IPA with the yeast.
Yeah, so we've been trying out a lot of different cultures just to expand our brewing and just understand these cultures a lot. And we did this beer at multiple temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
We try to change a lot of variables because we're trying to guess how people are going to brew with these beers. I don't know the best way to make a beer. All we can do is kind of test some of these things out and give our best recommendation on how to do some of these things. And I think we saw some interesting things.
Yeah, I've got our test log pulled up here. We made 10 gallons of the same wort and fermented with this blend at both 55 degrees and 68 degrees, just to kind of hit the two extremes of what we figured people were probably fermenting at. And both of them reached the same final FG at about 1010.
Nice.
And both had a pretty substantial dry hop to them. If anything, we had the warmer fermented version, sort of everything was like a notch up from the cold fermented version. Similar flavors, very similar beers, except for the cold fermented one appearing slightly darker. Not sure what theirs is, but and then the warmer fermented one, just having sort of, the aroma, the flavor, everything was sort of kicked up a notch from the cold fermented. The general consensus here being that we prefer the warmer fermented one.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. Well, we did a couple little fermentation temperature things ourselves. So, and we're going to be getting into that in a sec. The next beer that we're going to talk about that a Brülosophy contributor brewed was a British brown ale made by Jason Cipriani out in Pueblo, Colorado. We actually were kind of going for like a hybrid American brown ale, British brown ale thing, but we wanted to keep it simple. So he made a beer that was 1054 OG, fermented all the way down to 1008, and I believe he mashed at 152. So that's pretty decent attenuation for an ABV of 6%. And his grain bill was pretty, kind of brown ale-ish. You got 8 pounds of pale malt, 6 ounces of biscuit malt, 6 ounces of chocolate malt, 6 ounces of special B, and 6 ounces of special roast. So, this chewed right through that wort.
That is crazy. That's awesome.
Yeah. again, asked them the same questions. How hoppy is the beer? You've got 7 people. The highest rating that this one got was a 3 out of 5. So right smack in the middle there. And I believe he did 1, 2-ounce first wort hop dose of Styrian Goldings or something like that. So it was, you don't expect this to be a terribly hoppy beer. Everyone else, was lower than that. This was 14 participants. That was the case there in terms of how hoppy the beer was. You got pretty even split between fruity, earthy, spicy in terms of the descriptors that people applied to the hop character. A couple people came in with picked up a little bit of pine and floral, but this wasn't a terribly hop forward beer. In terms of how malty the beer is, we would expect to see, maybe some roast, some chocolate, and whatnot. And that's exactly what we got. We got 5 people rated the maltiness as being toasty. The highest rating in terms of how malty the beer was a 4. So it was much more malt forward than it was hop forward, like we'd expect to see. And you got another 5 people coming in with a rating of 3. So the good majority of folks were in that 3 to 4 range for in terms of maltiness. You got toasty, nutty, caramel, and sweet. Those were the 3 things that people thought most of this brown ale. I think one person came in with chocolate and one person came in with roasty. Anything surprising there to you guys?
I just want to drink that beer right now.
Oh my God, it sounds so good.
It's one of those beers that's always my soft spot. Like, you tell me a brown ale, like, I'm going to drink it. I don't think it gets as much love as it needs to, because it's one of those beers where it's not an extreme beer. It touches on a lot of different elements of what makes beer awesome. But then if it's done right, I think you just want to drink it all day. And the fact that you compare these 2 different beers, you got the New England IPA in this style, the maltiness is where it needs to be, kind of in both of them with the same yeast strain. Right.
Yeah. Exactly what you'd expect from both styles, And you're not the only one who loved this beer. Jason was telling me that he and his wife were comparing. He did a split batch as well with another common, English strain, and blind, him and his wife regularly and very consistently selected the Brülosophy Blend as the beer the brown ale that they preferred most, which is super exciting. So considering fermentation and attenuation, you got, let's see, people rated it. I think it looks like about 6 people rated it as a 2 out of 5 in terms of dryness. Another 4 people gave it a 3 out of 5, and 3 people gave it a 4 out of 5. Right there in the middle, not too dry, not too sweet. You got 7 people who picked up esters, which I think is, again, fascinating. He fermented this beer, I think, at 66 or 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So, at least people are detecting it. I think when you see a brown ale, maybe, at least my mind is kind of primed to maybe pick up a little bit more English ester type of thing.
I noticed there was special B in the grain bill. The raisiny flavors could be perceived as esters as well, or be contributing to that as well.
Yeah. Same thing with the phenolics. You had 3 people who said that they detected phenolics in the beer, not as an off flavor necessarily, but just as, had that character in it going on. But I tend to think that when there's any roast, special roast being in this one, some chocolate malt, there's the chance that somebody might pick up kind of like a smoky thing or, which is a phenol. So I don't know, just speculation. And then you had another 4 people, so about 29% rate the yeast character as being clean. Pretty solid there.
That's great.
Yeah. When asked if anyone perceived any off flavors, all 14 people said no. So good job, Jason. I'm sure they were there and the people's palates are just terrible, but and then again, how well does this beer represent the intended style? You had 7 of the 14 people. So half of the people rank it a 4 out of 5. And then another 2 rate it as extremely characteristic of the style, which is great. And nobody ranked it any lower than a 2 out of 5. So there's that. I think that's pretty cool. And then overall, how much did these people enjoy the beer? 6 out of the 14 people ranked it a 4 out of 5 in terms of preference. 3 out of 14 ranked it a 5 out of 5. So you got 9 people who are saying that they just love this beer. And I want one even more now.
Man, you're killing me, man.
I know. And then let's see, yet another 4 out of the 14 rank it a 3 out of 5. So, kind of moderate enjoyment of this beer. So that's the British/American hybrid style brown ale that we got going.
I just want to give Jason a hug. I think. Can you tutor me in your brewing practices, please?
I know when he when I had told the guys that we were going to be doing this project, immediately was like, I'm making a brown ale. That's what I'm doing. So I was excited about that. So yeah, I mean, it seems like, we're calling this one kind of a British brown ale because it has the, the kind of the hop rates, but it's kind of the American ABV. But it looks like, if we're just going to call it a generic brown ale, that it did a pretty damn good job. I'm excited to try it out in darker beers. Next up was Jake Houlihan. Now this is the one that I think a lot of us were a little bit, I don't know if I want to say worried about. Since I wasn't brewing it, I was just kind of excited about it. But Jake made a traditionally fermented German Pilsner, and we're talking I don't think he ever let it get above, say, like 60 degrees Fahrenheit, which was just for a 2-3 day diacetyl rest. Kept it at 48, 50 degrees the entire time. 1052 OG, 1014 FG. Again, we're seeing this really solid, predictable attenuation. I think he mashed at 154 on this beer, something like that. 9.75 pounds of Pilsner malt, 1.25 pounds of Carafoam. In fact, this was the beer that he made for the Carafoam experiment that you can go check out on Brülosophy.com. And then he also added in a pound of acidulated malt for pH adjustment. Okay. This is here we go. Me too.
The first two beers, they're like, could be sort of construed as like, Englishy in nature. So like the fact that they both performed well, this is a completely different in style. So yeah, let's see it.
Here we go. All righty. So in terms of hoppiness, 7 out of 22 people ranked it a 3 out of 5. I mean, that's almost exactly what I would rank any, German Pilsner. So that doesn't seem too surprising. You had 8 of his participants rank it a 1 out of 5. So this beer just wasn't terribly hoppy. You had a couple rank it a 4, kind of all over the place there. The hop descriptors, you had 8 rank it as rated as fruity. 4 said it was earthy. 1 said it was spicy. Another 6 said it was melony. And then 3 went with floral. So that seems interesting to me. I guess that's more of a hop issue, not so much of a yeast issue.
Do you know what hops he used in that recipe?
Yeah, he used 45 grams of Saaz at 60 minutes with 15 grams of Hallertau Magnum at 60 minutes. And then he tossed in another 35 grams of Czech Saaz at 20 minutes. So, nothing like, Hallertau Blanc or these kind of modern noble hops that are out there.
Yeah, and I was interested about the melon, the person who marked melon, because that's just not a descriptor I would expect to see with that hop profile. Yeah,
me either. Kind of interesting results there. In terms of maltiness, large majority of people ranked it a 3 out of 5. So you had 11 people there. Another 5 gave it a 1 out of 5, and 4 gave it a 2 out of 5, with 1 person ranking it 4 and 5 apiece. The malt descriptors, predictably, cracker bread crust won the majority. That was 13 of his tasters. Another 7 ranked it as toasty, and then 1 apiece ranked it as either nutty or caramelly and sweet. Again, pretty predictable there. Those cracker bread crust, I think, is what most people expect when they're drinking a nice traditional German Pilsner. Mm-hmm. Considering fermentation and attenuation, how dry did these people perceive the beer to be? 16 people ranked it a 3 or a 4. That was split evenly with 8 each ranking it either a 3 or a 4. Another 4 people said it was closer to sweet than it was to dry with a rating of 2. And then 2 people gave it a 1. So those are probably the 2 people who also felt the beer had a kind of a sweet malt character, is my guess.
That's interesting, because this is really one of those styles where fermentation's got to go really well.
Yeah.
Start to finish. It's really got to, the culture you're using, pitch rate, all those kind of variables, temperature, it's really got to be done right. And the fact that you have the attenuation kind of being where people expect it or want it to be, I think that's great.
Yeah. No, it sounds good to me too. When asked if they perceived any off flavors, 2 people out of the 22 marked yes, And on the off-flavor descriptor question, they're allowed to pick as many off-flavors as they want. So one person picked 2. You had one rating of astringent, one rating of diacetyl, one rating of metallic. I mean, that was 2 people out of 20. You know, who's more? Yeah. Majority rules. That's what I say. How well does the beer represent the intended style? Let's see. So this was a cool fermented beer that did attenuate as expected. 10 out of the 22 folks rated it as a 3 out of 5 in terms of how well it represented the target style, a German Pilsner. And then you had another 5 rank it a 4 out of 5, and 2 rank it a 5 out of 5. So 2 people thought this thing was spot on.
I would say that's great. I mean, you talk about that person who never does the 5. Well, they just have to show up this day.
I know. Yeah, it's impressive. Well, and another 5 gave it a 2 out of 5. But you've got, 17 people basically rating it a 3 out of 5 or higher in terms of representativeness of style. And, a 3 is over, that's more than the halfway mark when you're using a 0 to 5 scale. So I think that's pretty great for a versatile, all-in-one kind of clean beer yeast blend, And then in terms of how much the people enjoyed the beer that they were drinking, 7 people, 3 out of 5, another 7 gave it a 4 out of 5. 2 people were in that extremely, 5 out of 5 range, which again is impressive. Good job, Jake. And then only 4 people ranked it a 2 out of 5, with 2 people ranking it a 1 out of 5. They must not like Pilsner. Those are the hopheads, who just can't, they can't tolerate anything that doesn't have 40 pounds of hops. All right. Well, what do you guys think about that? Cool fermented German Pilsner. Does it make sense to you knowing what you do about this yeast blend?
I mean, I think any culture that's meant to be versatile that can work as a lager is like, I don't know. To me, that's super exciting. That's impressive. So that's kind of like the holy grail for me, is like something that makes a really good lager. And then the fact that we're throwing ales into the mix too. That's super exciting. It says that, there's more going on than, just us picking something out here. There's brewers who are brewing really good beers and they're brewing them the way they're supposed to be. I think that's a huge element of this is, we can't watch how they're making these beers, but it says that when you're given the right tools, that you're making exactly the beer you want to be making.
Right. And I can just hear the wheels turning in our listeners' minds right now. You're telling me that somebody fermented a New England IPA that was actually really decent, that a lot of people enjoyed, that somebody brewed a brown ale that was good, and then they used that same exact yeast blend to ferment a cool fermented traditional style German Pilsner that 14 people thought was at least better than okay. I mean, that's impressive, When we get back from this short break, we're going to be discussing the beer that I made using this very special yeast, where I made the same style as Jake, but using a slightly different approach. Shopping for brewing supplies online can be a real hassle, which is why we recommend Love to Brew. They've got great prices, super fast shipping, and they carry exclusive products like East Coast Yeast, the Brewer's Essentials brand, and their award-winning beer recipe kits. They're also the only place you can pick up your very own Brülosophy recipe kit. The numbers don't lie. Love to Brew has hundreds of 5-star reviews, and thousands of brewers are choosing them for their supplies and ingredients each year. Experience the difference at lovetobrew.com. That's love, the number 2, brew.com. As every brewer knows, the best beer requires the best hops, which Yakima Valley Hops provides fresh from the source to brewers around the world, carrying everything from classics like Cascade to modern favorites like Galaxy and Mosaic, as well as other ingredients and gear. Yakima Valley Hops has it all. And don't forget to check out their new podcast, The Late Edition, where the YVH crew goes into depth on our favorite plant with industry experts. Head over to YakimaValleyHops.com now to see all they have to offer, and subscribe to The Late Edition wherever it is you listen to podcasts. Founded in 1978 by brewing pioneer Charlie Papazian, the American Homebrewers Association is a division of the Brewers Association focused specifically on protecting and promoting the hobby of homebrewing. In addition to their work lobbying for the rights of homebrewers across the country, they're also the primary sponsor of Brülosophy.com. By joining the AHA, not only are you supporting their cause, but you get a ton of benefits as well. Discounts at brewers across the U.S., early access to tickets for events like the Great American Beer Festival, and you get to attend HomebrewCon, the world's biggest gathering of homebrewers. Head over over to brulosophy.com/AHA now to sign up to become a member. So out of utter curiosity and to satiate my, I guess it's sort of this desire to ferment unconventionally, particularly lagers at warmer temperatures, I ended up brewing a similar style, the same style as Jake brewed, though I did it slightly warmer. I made a German Pilsner that had 9.5 pounds of Pilsner malt and 8 ounces of Vienna malt, kind of a go-to grain bill for German Pilsner for me. The OG ended up being 1049, and it attenuated down to 1010. I believe I mashed this beer at 150, 152, something like that, for a 5.1% ABV. Pretty classic for the style. I fermented this beer at 66 degrees Fahrenheit, the same exact temperature that I ferment my ales at. I was curious to see what our Brülosophy Blend would do with the German style ale. I was thinking, if this has some sort of a Saccharomyces cerevisiae in it, then I'm probably going to get some esters. It's going to taste maybe a little bit more like a blonde ale. And so we made up this beer and put it to the test. I served it to 15 people. And here's the data that we got on this. How hoppy is the beer? You had kind of the same as Jake. 4 people ranked it a 3 out of 5. And then it just kind of spread out from there. You had 7 people rank it a 1 out of 5. Not a very hoppy beer. I believe it was hopped with some Magnum up front, maybe some Perle in the end there. This is the beer that I used for the latest fermentation vessel experiment. I was comparing a Spidell fermenter to a glass carboy. You can go read about that on the website. You had 2 people say it was a 2 out of 5 in terms of hoppiness. Nothing surprising there. The most commonly selected hop descriptor was floral, with 6 out of 15 people selecting that. Another 4 out of 15 thought it had more pine to it. And then here it is again. 2 people thought that there was melon. So another 2 people picked up fruity, and 1 person thought it was earthy. I'm curious about this whole melon thing, but in terms of hops, what do you guys think?
Yeah, it's nothing shocking there. The fact that we're talking about the melon again tells you that we're looking for something mind-blowing to talk about the hops.
Yeah, exactly. Then we'll just move on to malty. So in terms of how malty the beer was, again, you got 6 people out of 15. The biggest chunk of folks thought it was about a 3 out of 5 in terms of malt character. Another 4 thought it was a 4 out of 5. So there's your 10. And then 2 people didn't think it was malty at all. Another 2 thought it was about a 1 out of 5, and 1 person thought it was about a 2 out of 5. So to me, what that indicates more than anything is a relatively balanced kind of malt hop character. The large majority of people, 9 out of 15, rated cracker bread crust as being the strongest malt character, with 2 people thinking that toasty was up front, and 2 people rating it as kind of caramelly and sweet, and then 1 person each selecting nutty and roast. I don't know who in the world would select a clear yellow beer as roasty, but they did. Again, not too surprising, I don't think. About right in line with what we'd expect for a German Pilsner.
Yeah, that's where I wanted to be.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. In terms of fermentation and attenuation, you had, again, kind of an even spread in the middle here. About 4 people ranked it a 3 out of 5. 5 people ranked it a 4 out of 5. So pretty dry beer. 1 person thought it was very dry. There's that extreme, outlier again. 3 people thought it was a 2 out of 5. 2 people gave it a 1 out of 5. Nobody thought it was a very sweet beer. But I'm assuming that the people who rated it as the malt character is caramel and sweet, yet again, thought it was a 1 out of 5. So not too surprising on that one. The attenuation was right smack on where I was hoping it would be. I like this one. In terms of descriptors for yeast and fermentation characteristics, you got 10 out of 15 people who rated it as clean. Another 1 person who, this one's not terribly surprising. Another 1 person rated it, the yeast character as having a little bit of sulfur to it, which, you get that in some German Pilsners. Mm-hmm. 2 people each ranked esters and phenolics as being the primary yeast descriptor, but they didn't rank those as being off flavors because nobody said that this beer had any off flavors that they could detect. So maybe they were just kind of searching really hard and kind of picked them up.
What I guess we like to see here is the majority people rating it as clean, which you fermented much hotter than the cool fermented Pilsner. So, and that also majority thought it was clean.
Yep.
So that's a big range there, which is very nice and useful.
Yeah. I mean, if our goal was to put out, a clean strain that is very versatile that you can use for all of these different styles at their, kind of traditionally accepted fermentation temperatures, then it looks like we're onto something here, boys. That's
I'd say so.
Yeah, it's looking good so far. So out of the 15 people, again, nobody said that they experienced any off flavors in the beer. So pat my own back on that one. I didn't either. This beer went really, really fast, by the way. When we double up, so I had an experiment, plus I had to collect the data for this. And when we double up like that, it's always hard for me to kind of keep my hands off the faucet. So when I got the data collected, it was nice to be able just to go to town on it. In fact, one of my neighbors, Tim, who reviews beers for this here podcast, he took his first glass of it after evaluating the beer, and I let him evaluate it as well, and said, "Man, this might be the best best Pilsner you've made." So, which is cool to hear from a dude who he sustains himself on Coors Light or Miller Lite. So in terms of how well the beer represented the intended style, you had 5 out of 15 people rated as a 5 out of 5. So saying it was extremely German Pilsner, like that's going to ruffle the feathers of some people. I know that. Another 8 people rated it as a 4 out of 5. So there's 13 out of 15 people saying that it was, 4 or 5 out of 5 in terms of style representation. And then 2 people gave it a 2 out of 5. We're going to erase those people from my tasting panels. Just kidding.
Compared to Jake's Pilsner, it looks like you have a higher percentage of people in those like 4 and 5 range.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting too. And there are any number, this is just evaluative data. We get that. We're having a little bit of fun with it. But this is something that I've experienced on a very anecdotal level and have heard from a bunch of brewers out there that fermenting lagers warm with whatever yeast they're using. I've heard of people using, the common Chico strain to do this, that there's something about that warm fermentation that drives the dryness and the cleanliness of the beer that ends up making it taste very lager-like, which is so antithetical to what you're supposed to be doing.
We're in the upside down right now, dude. That doesn't make any sense.
We are in the upside down. Oh my goodness. Watch out for the
demi-dogs.
That's right. The demi-dogs. What a great show. Overall, how much did you enjoy this beer? 6 out of 15 people gave it a 5 out of 5. I would put myself in that camp as well, though of course I didn't take the survey. 5 out of the 15 people gave it a 4 out of 5. 3 gave it a 3 out of 5, and then 1 person ranked it a 1 out of 5. Again, the hophead, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Can't drink anything else but hoppy beers, and probably a Belgian here or there. But I mean, God,
I'm so excited to hear how people respond to this podcast and we talk through it.
Yeah.
I'm most excited to hear how people, use these kind of strains, but really I want to hear the controversy and people talk this out because, you guys get a lot of trust because of the methods that you use, and you've been doing it for a while now. You're educating people. You're also encouraging other people to do these kind of things at home. So I really want to hear people tell me that this is impossible.
Right.
This is not possible.
I think one thing that these experiments are sort of showing us is we, these are the practical applications of this blend. At the lab, we've done a lot of tests on this blend more for the metrics. How much is it going to ferment? Can it handle high alcohol? Can it handle this temperature? So to see it actually in practice in various different beer styles is not something we've been able to do to this extent. So
yeah,
it's all great data for us.
Yeah. And Jeff, if you really want to see the controversy, I can forward you 400-500 emails a day. Just follow some forums. It's out there. It's not hard to find.
You get controversy, don't you?
Well, we don't intend to do it. God. But I'll as the brewer of this beer and as somebody who doesn't really care about tradition very much, I respect it. Don't get me wrong. We stand on the shoulders of giants and all that stuff. I was so excited with how incredibly tasty this beer came out. I can speak to this one because I actually did taste it and I loved this beer. I absolutely will be brewing it many times again. Different hop hop schedules and all that kind of stuff, different malts. Super stoked about that. So, really exciting for warm fermented Pilsner. I actually can't wait to make something like a higher alcohol, maybe something like a Doppelbock or something with this strain, and see how that warm fermented and see how that comes out. I keep calling it a strain, but I know it's a blend, right? So, yeah.
Well, then you'd really blow up the internet then.
The fuse has been lit, so to speak. Well, before we get to the next experiment, I want to tell everyone about Brewers Hardware, a rad company specializing in tri-clover compatible sanitary fittings, conical fermenters, kettles, and brew stands. Brewers Hardware offers a variety of unique and hard-to-find items for both the home and craft brewing markets, including high-quality stainless fittings at competitive prices and very fast shipping. For those who live near Huntington Beach, California, they also offer in-house welding for customized kettles. Pretty rad. Head over to brewershardware.com or give them a call at 714-891-1150 to find anything you need for your brewery. If you mention Brülosophy at checkout, they're also going to toss in a free little gift. That's brewershardware.com. All right. The next beer that we're going to talk about is an American porter that Matt Del Fiacco brewed. American porter is known for being a little bit higher in terms of OG. He hit 1058 on this bad boy and then fermented it down to 1019, right within range of what you'd expect for a beer like this. I believe he mashed at 153, 154 for a final ABV of 5.1%. Grain bill on this was 10.63 pounds of pale malt, so 87% or so, 10 ounces of medium UK crystal, 8 ounces of black patent, and 8 ounces of pale chocolate. The malt question is going to be an interesting one on this one. But we're going to start with hoppy. This one is right in the middle. You got people looking like they were just kind of going for the midline here. Six of his tasters, he had 15 altogether. 6 of his tasters gave it a 3 out of 5, and then you had 2 give it a 4 out of 5, and everyone else gave it a 0, 1, or a 2. So not very hoppy. You wouldn't expect it to be. It's a nice dark beer that they saw was dark. In terms of the hop character, I appreciate this. 8 people said earthy. Another 4 gave it pine. Give it a rating of piney, and then 3 said floral, and I think that covers it all. So sounds about right about in line with what you'd expect from an American porter. In terms of how malty this beer was, again, you had kind of right in the middle. 7, almost half of the people rated it a 3 out of 5. Another 6 rated it a 4 out of 5, and then you had 2 give it a 2 out of 5. So kind of right in the middle there. Yeah, despite the fact that this was a relatively, had a decent amount of roasted malt in it, about a pound altogether, I think, when you include the black patent and the pale chocolate. So not a terribly malty beer, but definitely malty enough to kind of hold up whatever was going on in it.
I think over and all, this one actually got one of the highest malty ratings out of all the beers, too.
Yeah, and there's that whole argument to be made about when you're doing ratings, I forget what the term is, and I shouldn't. People are kind of have a tendency to kind of rate things towards the middle, and not get too extreme, which is what makes those extreme ratings so interesting, I think. In terms of malt descriptors, number 1 was roast, which says to me that the yeast is allowing that to come through. Another 5 rated it as caramelly sweet as being kind of the main malt character that was there, and then 3 gave it chocolate. So all that covers all 3 specialty grains that Matt used in the beer.
Right, a ton. I think it's right. I think it's right in line with the style, and that he's got everything he wanted to out of that grain bill, because nobody really registered the sort of other descriptors that are often used, like cracker and bread, which I think has been, the biggest one in pretty much every other beer.
Yeah, right.
Happen here. So he's definitely getting all he can out of those black patent and chocolate editions.
Yep. All right, moving on to fermentation and attenuation characteristics. We've got most people, 40% of tasters thought it was about a 2 out of 5. So somewhat sweet, I would say. Another 3 out of 5 thought it was maybe somewhat dry, but that was the majority. You had 4 people put it more towards the sweet camp, which again, given the style, makes sense. It did finish at 1019, so not too surprising there. I know Matt was going for kind of that sort of a finishing gravity. He wanted kind of a nice, rich, thick, American porter, and that's what he got. The fermentation descriptors that people selected most of was, anybody want to guess? It was clean. Which it's, when you're going for an American porter, that is what you want. You want the yeast to get in there, do its job, and sort of get out of the way to let those malt characteristics and even a little bit of that hop character come through. 4 people did select esters. Again, there's that darker crystal malt, or that, medium crystal malt that he used in there. One person put phenolics. So, seeing kind of a trend here where you get the few people got to put esters and phenolics. It's all good. Maybe they're sensitive to it. When asked if people perceived any off flavors, 3 out of the 15 selected yes, which meant that 80%, 12 out of the 15 did not detect any off flavors. And all 3 of those people selected one off flavor, and that was oxidized. So
on this strain and in other strains we've tested here, oxidation is not something we typically pick up off that is, yeast dependent. It's usually a handling, post-fermentation handling issue that we run up against.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's been my experience as well. So, and maybe it was there, but again, you got to keep in mind it was only 20%, 3 out of 15 people who said they picked it up. The fact that they all kind of coalesced around oxidation is interesting, and I think worthy of consideration.
Well, I think too, like the beers that are more hop and malt driven are the ones I think you're most likely to get that kind of comment on.
Yeah, likewise. Which this one wasn't. This was much more malt driven and dark. So perhaps it had a little bit of oxidation going on. How well does this beer represent the intended style? 5 people gave it a 3 out of 5. 6 people gave it a 4 out of 5. One person thought it was a perfect example of an American porter. And 3 people gave it a 2 out of 5. So pretty representative of the style. Sounds to me like he did a good job making a decent American porter with this Brülosophy blend. In terms of how much people enjoyed this beer, 2 people said that if I gave it a 5 out of 5, really enjoyed it. Another 3 ranked it 4 out of 5, and 8 people ranked it 3 out of 5. So they enjoyed it just fine. Only 2 people ranked it a 2 or lower. So yet again, pretty impressive turnout for an American porter fermented with the Brülosophy blend, this blend of yeast that is just going for this kind of versatility.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I think so far all the beers have sort of generally coalesced around that 3 to 4, how well does it represent this style and how would you enjoy it, 3 to 4 range. So that's pretty cool. See it across all those different.
Marshall's was 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I took all the surveys myself. The only reason they weren't all 5 out of 5 is I had to make it look like I faked it, so it wasn't faking. But I do think that's in terms of survey data and all of that. You kind of expect to see again that central tendency. Which again, we've already said it, but when you see people rating it even higher than that, that's where the real interesting data is, I think, right? Because you've got these folks who who like it more than you might expect people to rate themselves as liking it, which is pretty neat. The last beer that we're going to talk about, this one was brewed by Ray Found. I thought it was kind of an interesting one. He wanted to not make an American IPA. That was the plan at least. And so, but he didn't want to just go with a straight up caramelly kind of pale ale. So he went with a hoppy blonde ale. And this beer was made using 9 3/4 pounds pale malt with 2 ounces of honey malt. That's it. Really simple grist. 1049 OG down to 1012 FG for a ABV of 5%. I know he designed it to be right around 5%. This was inspired. His hop schedule was inspired a bit by his, I think he calls it Citra Murillo, 6-pint Citra Murillo hoppy blonde ale, something like that, which you can find over at brülosophy.com. It might be a locked recipe for Patreon contributors. Not it might. Yep, we're going to go through this data real quick. How hoppy is the beer? You got 3 people who gave it a 4 out of 5, 2 people who gave it a 3 out of 5, another 2 people who gave it a 2 out of 5. Again, right in the middle there, and then 1 person gave it a 1 out of 5. Nobody ranked this one as a 5 out of 5, which despite being a hoppy blonde ale, you still expect that blonde ale character to kind of come through. Yeah. So not too surprising there. In terms of hop descriptors, you had 5 people rated as fruity, which makes sense given the hop. He used Citra, Amarillo, and probably some other fruity hop. 2 people rated as floral and 1 person rated as pine. He got 8 data points on this, by the way. Let's see. In terms of maltiness, again, this is a good one. 3 people rated it as a 3 out of 5. 3 people rated it as a 2 out of 5, and 2 people rated it as a 1 out of 5. So again, really well balanced with that malt, with that hop character. And in terms of, here it is again, in terms of the malt descriptors that people selected as being the strongest, 5 out of 8 people selected cracker and bread crust. 1 person put toasty. 1 person picked up a little bit of a caramel sweetness. And then again, I promise you, no one was traveling from Fresno down to Corona, California, but 1 person thought this hoppy blonde ale was roasty. So I don't know where that's coming from. One of the things about data collection is you can throw a survey out to this is something that I experienced even before I was doing beer data collection. You throw a survey out to some of the most trained people out there, and somebody is going to surprise you with what they select. Considering fermentation and attenuation, how dry did these people perceive the beer to be? You got 4 out of 8 people said 3 out of 5. So this was a moderately dry beer. Another 3 people ranked it as a 4 out of 5, and then 1 person thought it was a 2 out of 5 in terms of dryness. And I love seeing 100% in terms of the yeast and fermentation descriptors that people experienced as being the strongest. 8 out of 8 selected clean.
We could just call this, instead of the Brülosophy Blend, just the clean and cracker blend.
the crackery clean blend. Yeah, that's good. That's good. You'd have to somehow, like, to make it really bootleg though, you'd have to like harvest the yeast off of like a saltine cracker and somebody's clean body or something like that. Like, gross. We'll leave that to Rogue. Do you perceive any off flavors in the beer? Only 1 person out of the 8 marked yes, and apparently they picked up some acetaldehyde. Which I experience as kind of being, not so much green appley, though I think that's what people look for with acetaldehyde. I get more of like a fresh cut grass type of character from it, so maybe that was a part of it. Anyways, as far as off flavors go, I don't think for the most part people didn't detect anything. So that's again promising. And then how well does this beer represent the intended style? Hoppy blonde ale isn't really a style, but blonde ale is. And we told them that it was a hoppier version of a blonde ale. So their raking on this one is relative to knowing that it's a hoppier blonde ale. 4 out of 8 people gave it a 5 out of 5. Nice. So our fun little yeast blend is making a beer that people think represents these styles pretty well, actually. 2 out of the 8 people ranked it a 4 out of 5. And the final 2 gave it a 3 out of 5. So nobody gave it anything lower than a 3 out of 5 in terms of representativeness of the intended style. Kudos, Ray. That's awesome. I know. Wow. So we're sitting here talking about it all nonchalantly, but this is still blowing my mind that we all use the same blend of yeast to create these vastly, wildly different, arguably clean style beers that are coming out with such great numbers here. Finally, overall, how much did you enjoy this beer? Not 1 person rated it 0, 1, or 2 on this. You had 1 person give it a 3 out of 5, and then 5 people rated it a 4 out of 5 in terms of their personal enjoyment, and then 2 people gave it a 5 out of 5. So yet again, people really enjoyed this hoppy blonde ale that Ray fermented with the Brülosophy Blend.
I think it's really interesting to have this hoppy blonde ale where it's, kind of a, little more fluid style. It's not as, hardcore exactly what it has to be. So to me, that the rating of how much do you enjoy the beer is a little, unhitched to a norm of some kind, and it's purely about, what do you like about this beer, if at all, and the fact that those ratings reflect that people really enjoy this beer, especially when you're talking also about how people tend to float towards the middle of a rating, that the fact that it was kind of on the much higher end of, enjoyment for people shows that, this was a really well-made, executed beer, start to finish. The final package was something that people wanted to enjoy and drink, regardless of how it, fit any kind of style profile of any kind. This was just a really well-made beer.
Yeah. And I've, he's used this particular recipe a few times for experiments that he's done on the site, and it's always well received. And it'd just be curious to me to see this data compared to others, because I don't see how, given the kind of like you said, the fluidity between personal preference and whatnot, but how it could get much better than 5 people out of 8 rating it a 4 out of 5 in terms of how much they enjoyed it. 4 out of 5 saying that it represented a hoppy blonde ale extremely well.
Yep. And especially like in an anonymous way, this isn't hanging out with your homebrew club and people being overly nice, this is, people can be brutally honest in these kind of scenarios.
Oh, we beg for it, which, you don't have to, you're not going to make us butthurt because you don't like a beer we make. It's kind of built into the whole experimental, ethos, I guess. But so it looks like this yeast accomplishes basically what we were looking for. Let me know if you disagree. But that whole idea of versatility. Now, obviously, it would be really difficult for us to make a 100% versatility. I don't think this is going to push out, a classic saison, just based on how clean, that character was. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to talk about in terms of this, in terms of the Brülosophy blend?
Sure. We had an experiment we did with this blend. I think we were sort of just interested in, pitch rates and sort of how they would affect a beer used with this blend. And we came up with an experiment where we pitched 4 different containers of wort, 1 or 2 at a sort of lower pitch rate, the pitch rate you would typically get in a homebrew pack, and then 2 at a higher pitch rate, about double that. And then, the 2 that were at the homebrew pack level, we split between 55 and 68 as far as their temperature range, and the same thing with the 2 at a higher rate. And all 4 samples reached the same terminal gravity. So I think what we've sort of determined from this is that the health when pitching is paramount to the amount of yeast you're pitching. Although, make sure you pitch the right amount of yeast, obviously.
Sure, yeah.
But within that experiment, we found that it performed pretty standard across all those different variables.
That's awesome. Yeah. And pitch rate, I think, is something that, for us, not knowing what's going on with this blend, we tend to view pitch rate as being a function of fermentation temperature primarily, not necessarily yeast strain. So, if you're going to do a cold fermented traditional style lager, then pitch at, lager pitch rates. If you're going to do a warm fermented ale style, beer, then pitch at ale pitch rates. And that's what worked really well for us. I'm really excited about this. This blend is going to be available to homebrewers very soon. It's the Brülosophy Blend. How can other brewers out there who want to play around with the Brülosophy Blend get their hands on this yeast?
Well, starting on Monday, March 5th, we'll have an internet pre-sale through bootlegbiology.com. And you can log in, place your order, and then the week of March 26th, we'll ship you out this culture. So it'll come to you by mail, and you'll be ready to brew with it by the end of the month.
That is awesome. I'm so excited that people get to play around with this yeast that we all had such a fun time, not only fermenting with, but also drinking the beers that we made with them. If you are into experimental stuff and you want to try something new, I can't recommend, obviously my name's on it, so I'm going to pat my own back by recommending this yeast. But the blend, we spent a lot of time working toward this versatile yeast that we thought would work really well in a number of different styles. And we think that you're going to enjoy it too. So make sure, starting right now, actually, you can head over to bootlegbiology.com and pre-order a pack or a few packs of the Brülosophy Blend. I think you will enjoy it just as much as we did. So we're going to have all of the data that we talked about in this episode, which I know went a lot longer than our typical episodes, up on the website in just a couple of days. You can head over to brülosophy.com to read about it there and to see all the pretty charts and whatnot. And then if you want to check out the experiments and any of the other wacky stuff that we're up to, you can head over to brülosophy.com as well. The Brülosophy podcast is made possible by the generous support of our sponsors as well as all of our rad listeners. We seriously could not do this without you. Cheers to everyone who has subscribed and left a review of our show. It makes a huge difference. If you haven't yet, please consider doing so. Head over to brülosophy.com/support to view a list of ways you can easily help us to continue producing this podcast. If you want a reward for your support, visit patreon.com/brülosophy. Thanks again for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Brülosophy podcast. Until then, think beer.
Start off the morning with some hot tea, lemon and honey cause it suits my bro. Put some herb in the bowl, yeah, it's homegrown. Ain't gotta go through the middleman no more.